Hi, my name is Robin Watson, and I am a private bassoon teacher in Houston. And I wanted to talk with you today about kind of my experiences being a private lesson teacher full time, how to get started, like kind of a good way to get started, and kind of how to approach it. And yeah, so I have a studio of about 50 students. I start kids when they're in fifth grade, usually around May of fifth grade. Kids will start coming to say, hey, I signed up for bassoon next year. Can I get a private lesson and start? Because they told me I could. And so I take them all the way through their senior year of high school and help them through the college choosing process, which, as you know, is very daunting. So the first thing to kind of start off with is kind of my advice in being a private lesson teacher. You don't want to do it just for the money. There are a lot of people who do that just for the paycheck. And if you have enough students there, it is a live-offable paycheck. Do it for the right reasons. Do it for the kids. They're going to learn a lot more if you are putting in the kind of effort into it that you would want to be given to you as well. So think about like how your college professors have treated you, how they've guided you through all of the steps, and kind of put that same energy into the kids. Even if you're juggling being a student, being in a lot of ensembles, taking auditions, give as much as you can. And I speak from experience this year of taking a lot of auditions, trying to make it work. And I think for the most part, I've done a pretty good job. Every now and then I feel like I have not given my all to the kids and I feel really bad. And that's, I think, a good sign. It means that I care, I hope. I have met a lot of private lesson teachers through my years of being one. And some of them are, they're in it for the right reasons, and you can tell based on how they talk about their students to others and how proud they are of the kids' accomplishments, rather than talking about their accomplishment as a teacher. It's all about the kids, and that's kind of hard to turn off in your brain because all throughout school, it's been about how well you've done and, all of your personal ways of thinking about yourself and your accomplishments. And now to be an effective teacher, it's about thinking about the kids. So it's just kind of making that little turn in your life. When I was in high school, I taught about 6 kids. They were 6th and 7th graders. And I really remember just wanting the paycheck, because what high schooler can say they get paid $20 an hour. I remember having to take ibuprofen before one kid's lesson because he never could figure out how to play soft, and I would always get a headache. But I wasn't giving him my full attention because clearly I was paying more attention to my headache than trying to get him to figure out how to play soft. So that particular student obviously didn't learn much from me. But that's, so make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, because I speak from experience of not doing it for the right reasons, and really seeing that later in life, what kind of effect that had on those kids. So when you're ready to really become a private teacher and devote a lot of time to this craft, because it is a craft, it's not just let's sit down and not think too hard, because you do. You have to think on your toes a lot of the time. You kind of want to figure out what geographical area you want to teach in, or where you want to live, or where you do live, and how far away you want to travel. So speaking from the Texas experience, I have no idea how any other states kind of do this, but with Texas, you can go onto the TMEA website and see all of the regions, and see kind of what regions you want to be concentrating in, and then go to their websites, the individual regions' websites, and a lot of them will have, a directory of the bands in the area, and you can literally see everybody's email and just send an email to everybody. You want to make sure that you're wording it very genuinely, and if you have references like your current teacher or any other professors in your school of music who know you as a person and know have seen you interact with younger students or believe that you can do this to a genuine level. Include references in your initial email. Don't be afraid to get responses that say, not this time, we don't have any bassoon students or whatever. Because what could happen, and what did happen to me, is that I got a response of that, and then 3 days later I got an email from somebody saying they got my email from the person who literally just told me no. But they sent my email on to their friend who needed a bassoon teacher. So just because one person says no, don't get worked up, because they're passing these emails along to their colleagues. So don't be afraid to be asked about like your teaching philosophy and your experience. And just be as honest as you can about all of that. You don't want to put on a face that's not actually yours. You want to make sure that what you give them in your initial correspondence is who you are and who you plan to be. Because these band directors can see through a lot, and they can tell if you're kind of not saying the true things about yourself or what, and also just don't be afraid to travel farther than you thought you were going to. But the situation with me, when I got told no, but then got an email back, it was about 10 minutes longer than I had initially set my radius to. But they gave me 16 students right off the bat. So I got that email, and within about 2 weeks, I started over there, and they had made a schedule for me, right after school, and it was great. You have plans, but be prepared to go further and kind of change up a little bit, because it can only lead to good things, honestly. Be very organized. I am not an organized person. If I turned my camera around and showed you my desk, you would laugh at the fact that I keep track of 50 kids and their contact information and how much they owe me and what they've been working on. Somehow my brain can keep all of that in check, but can't clean my desk. So we're not going to go there. But I use a studio management tool called My Music Staff. It lets me send invoices. It puts all the expenses on. I can color coordinate my schedule based on where the kids have their lessons. It's fab. And I can also upload documents to it, or recordings, or anything, like any kind of a PDF of any music. If I need them to practice an ensemble and don't want to email it to them, I can just say, go look on the website, it's there. I can tell them, I can set those specific documents or files or whatever to only be accessible by certain families. So if I have, like, let's just say if I have a trio that a composer sent me and they want me to have my kids play it, I don't know, that'd be cool. Composers, if you see this, send them my way. But I can set it so that only those kids can see that file, so that it's not kind of getting out into public, which is nice. Even as public as my 50 some odd students are. So only those kids are getting it. And if I loan anything out, like I loan solos out to students. Stupid me, I loan vocals out. I charge them a small rental fee if I loan out one of my personal vocals, but it happens because sometimes school vocals are crap. But it'll let me keep track of all of that, which is really, really nice. Parents have the option of inputting their kids' practicing time into it. And I think they can actually put what they've been practicing. Don't quote me on that. But when I go to like input whether a kid showed up to their lesson, it'll say Johnny practiced 5 hours this week. And if Johnny comes into his lesson and can't play a C scale, I know that Johnny either didn't practice what I assigned him or was fudging his practice record, or is just practicing wrong. So it helps that when parents do that, it helps me a lot to be able to diagnose any issues that are happening. Because sometimes kids, if they know that they didn't do a good job of practicing, they won't admit that they practiced at all. And they feel like it's kind of better to say that they didn't practice than to admit that they're practicing wrong. So that having the parents be able to do that, it helps. It also allows me to take PayPal payments. I set it so that there's a little bit of a charge to offset my expenses. So the parents pay a little bit higher, but I get all of the money. I end up getting all of my hourly fee that way, which is nice. A lot of parents like to do that because then they don't have to trust their child with money in the school. I also accept Venmo and Zelle and Apple Pay. And last week I had a kid pay me in Cash App. So it pays to be flexible with that, especially this day and age, because it's just easier for the parent to not have to deal with a paper check. I do still have a few that send me checks. And if you ask them, they would tell you point blank that I keep forgetting to put them in. And they'll email me and they'll be like, hey, I gave you $50 last week. And I'll look, oh yeah, I did. So I put it in. But it's nice now to be able to accept every single kind of like e-payment possible. When you are when you start teaching, you'll more than likely start after school starts, or like right at the beginning of the school year after they've already chosen kids. So then you're at the end of the first year, like school year of teaching, there'll be a lot of them, especially in Texas, will do instrument selection like in February or March. And if the band directors really trust you, like if you've proven yourself to them, they will allow you to try their kids out for bassoon. It's like a choose your own adventure book, and it's fantastic. And it's one of my favorite nights of the year. Because I get to sit in a little room with a bassoon, obviously, and have these little tiny children parade themselves in going, this is cool. It sounds like a fart. And those are the kids that you really want. And I kind of have a code with the band directors when they're doing that, because every now and then a kid will be like, ooh, that looks fun. You said scholarship. And if the band directors don't think that they actually should play bassoon, or if they have like bad grades or bad conduct, the band directors will come in and bring them to me and they'll say, hi, Robin, Mary wants to try the bassoon. And if they think that the kid will be a good fit, they'll bring them in and say, hi, Robin, I think Mary would be a great bassoon person. So we have a little code. So if I know that if they bring in a kid and says, Mary wants to try it, I give them a really hard read that ain't gonna work. But one of my biggest pet peeves is when band directors tell a kid that they can't play it because they're too small. Some of my best students couldn't reach the whisper key until 7th grade. So as long as there's a plateau key, as long as they can reach their left hand around and they are making a good sound and have like the good, lip look, and good grades and good, anything else. As long as those things are met, I'm going to take a chance on them. Because a lot of times those are kids that are like adamant that they want to try it and have the grades and have the conduct and have whatever comments from their 5th grade teachers going, this would be a really good double reed player. And so don't just try not as much as possible. Don't let size dictate whether or not you're going to be a bassoon player, or them, because you already are. It'll just be better that way. usually in Texas, at least at my schools, the directors screen for grades and conduct. It's kind of what I've been talking about. You can have good grades and the kids don't need to be taking like all pre-AP classes or all gifted talented classes to be a good bassoon player. They just need to be kind of like, kooky and excited. And, the kind of kid that sticks out is someone who'd do well in a 1-person, 2-person class, be on their own, make silly sounds, but still with the brain power. One of my big things with my teaching is that I let my kids get creative. As much as I can, I don't tell them no. I had a little girl in 6th grade, sound out my heart will go on in B major, except she had not learned C sharp and D sharp. So she had a little modulation in there, but boy, was she excited and proud of herself because she goes, I taught myself the best song and I'm going to play it for you right now, Miss Robin. And so I used that to teach her C sharp and D sharp, and get that part of her fingering knowledge in check. I had a kid, about 7-8 years ago who came in 6th grade and was like, Miss Robin, I found the sheet music to my favorite Skrillex song, and I'm going to play it for you. Okay. And so he brought in the sheet music and he started playing, and he was just so proud of himself. And he was like, will you take a video of me and show all of your friends because this is awesome? And I was like, absolutely. Those kinds of things are what takes those kids to the next level. When you let them be who they want to be and play what they want to play, even if it is in a way not really productive to what you're trying to teach them, just let them do it. I draw the line at letting them play Baby Shark instead of their B flat scale. But that's not a big, I let them do a lot more. Because what that kind of lets them know is that it tells them that your lessons are a safe place. It tells them that you're not going to judge them if they mess up or if they do something that they shouldn't or any of the above. It gives them a lot of I can't remember the word. Sorry. Confidence. Kind of like I have right now. It gives them a lot of confidence in themselves as musicians because they're finding something that you didn't ask them to do, but you're letting them do it and they're having fun. Along those same lines, don't tell a kid that something is too hard. Because they are going to believe you if you tell them it's too hard. I teach my 6th graders the B flat scale 3 octaves. Not because I'm crazy, not because I want them to hate themselves, because, sometimes you think 3 octave scales are awful. But because I want them to think that it's fun. Because when you approach a 6th grader and you're like, do you want to learn a new note? Every single one of them is like, yeah, that's awesome. And so they do it. I have 7th graders playing melody scale studies. They learn tenor clef. Some of them learn tenor clef in 6th grade because they're the kind of kids that just, they need the challenge. Not all of them, don't get me wrong. Some of them still struggle to play F sharp without a first finger on the high F sharp. But don't ever tell them that it's hard because then they'll get it in their head that they can't do it. I sometimes teach 6th graders to double tongue and they think it's the most fun thing in the world, and they go into their band hall and they're like, look what I can do. And they think they're the coolest thing ever. And they are, because they play the bassoon, and keep reminding them of that. Because when they get into 7th and 8th grade, they're going to find out that they get the bass line. But because they know so many things from your lessons, it's going to keep them engaged. It's going to keep them having fun and continuing in band, which is great. And Yeah. So the other thing with beginners, I'm reading off a script, and I wrote it at like 1 a.m. So some things might be off. Another thing with the beginners is know what your curriculum is going to be. So I've been teaching full time for 10 years now. And the whole time I've been using this book, Foundations for Success by Cheryl Huddleston. She's who I studied with in grad school, and she is kind of my inspiration behind being a teacher. She's like her, she taught me how to be a really good teacher because she was a good teacher. She gave me a lot of insight into how to like really dig into the young brain and really speak to them. And so because of that, I use her book. Every year my kids get this, and we are in it from day one. It moves in a really good way. It just makes sense to me. And yeah. So I'm gonna see if I can do this. So it starts on C, and it talks about, counting and tonguing right off the bat. So it'll be easier if I just hold this up. So I'm talking to myself. Okay. So each page has the note, the way it's on the staff, the note on a fingering, and then all these exercises to go with it. Which I like. The kids understand them, and it's easy enough for them to grasp what needs to be grasped without too many tears, because that's important as well. And the other little thing that I do, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. So the other thing with sixth graders is make things fun. So you want to let them have all the creativity in the world, and that's great. But like what I do with the young ones is I make little names for some of the fingers, not all of them, because that would be a lot. So for instance, my thumb keys, I call the banana, the pancake, like everybody knows, the pear, and the prickly pear. I call the A flat key the prickly pear because I have not met a sixth grader who needs to use it. I think I've used it twice in my life. I don't know, trill key. So I give them the idea that it is going to hurt if they touch it, so then they don't. It's great. I've been known to put thumbtacks right here. Last year I was pretty soft, and I just put really coarse sandpaper there. So because I don't like them to rest their thumb there, I like it to hover, and so we start that whole hovering thing from the get-go. If they don't have an option, I yell at them in a fun way if they put their thumb there. The D flat, so middle D flat, I call squishy. So whenever we learn D flat, I show them a little clip from Finding Nemo of when Dory finds a jellyfish and she goes, "You shall be called Squishy, and you are my squishy," and then he stings her. So if they encounter a D flat in the wild and they say, "Miss Robin, I don't remember what that is," all I have to say is, "What did Dory call her jellyfish?" And they're like, "Squishy," and then they go immediately to the D flat. High D flat, I call the claw. The D flat that I teach my kids is what most would consider the long D flat. So 1, 2, 3 C sharp, and 1, 2, 3 F banana, the B flat key for normal people who aren't my students or me. I call this the claw, and so when they learn the C sharp, we look at the clip where the aliens in Toy Story go, "The claw," and it's great. So then when we encounter the D flat in the wild, they think the claw, and they'll say that. For the thumb stuff, when we're learning our low notes, I teach low notes before I go to the half holes. I feel like it's more important in their development to learn the low, to learn how to control the low notes before we go higher. I know a lot of people disagree with that. So you as the teacher get to decide what order you want to teach. and why. And that's kind of nice about the bassoon, is that there's not just a one set way, so you can be kind of flexible. But so when I'm teaching them the thumb keys, we go hitchhiker, scoot, squish, squish. So we call that the thumb dance. So hitchhiker, scoot, squish, squish. And what that kind of helps them to do is learn how to move their thumb without moving all of these guys. As you know, that's really important and kind of difficult for little ones. I had one kid who could not remember E flat to save her life. So the low E flat where you have the D plus the E flat key. And so she's like, I need a name for that. You have names for everything else. What do you call that one? I was like, E flat. And she's like, well, it's a D with an E flat. So I'm going to call it Debbie. Okay. So we got Debbie. She learned Debbie. And when we got to this E flat, she was like, okay, well, that's a bigger E flat. I need another name. So Deb. Okay. And then when we learned high E flat, I usually call high E flat D plus 3 because I do D and then 1, 2, 3. She insisted on calling that Deborah. So, let them be as kooky as they need to be to succeed. The other one for A flat, I call it stretchy because you have to stretch your thumb because it makes perfect sense. I think that's all of the little funny ones. The high F sharp, I just call the weird one because it's weird. And then G, high G with 1 and 4, and A flat, it's the great switcheroo. And then A flat's the longhorn. So they learn that from G to A flat, what's up comes down, what's down goes up. Because I teach them the full A flat fingering. So, yeah. Okay. I might come back to beginners. I have no idea what order this is in. So another thing that I do with my kids is that I invite college professors down to either give master classes or give lessons. It works in a lot of different ways. So they'll come down. We'll either schedule a master class in a school. And the schools, for me, they've been really great about opening up. I just have to email the band director and say, hey, can I have the school this day? And they'll email the facilities manager and say, hey, turn the AC on. And it's fun. But so the kids get a low-cost introduction to all these people who are amazing teachers, into their teaching philosophy, their way of approaching music. So they get an introduction to that. Excuse me. The teachers get an introduction to the kids. And so they'll meet these kids when they're in 7th or 8th grade. Some of my 6th graders even come to these master classes. Whether or not they play, sometimes they have, a lot of times they just sit and listen. But the professors are still able to meet them. And if those professors are able to come back year after year, then they're seeing these kids grow. And they're seeing them mature, not only as musicians, but also as people. And so then they are able to decide if they want to pursue that kid as a potential studio member in college. And the kids are able to see or to experience their teaching to know if they want to keep experiencing that teaching into college. It's really great. Some of my students would prefer private lessons over master classes. And the parents are totally fine paying the extra cost. Usually when we have master classes, the kids pay about $10 to $15 per kid to play, and everybody gets an opportunity to either play or say no and just listen. I give everybody a chance to play if they want to. But when they are in lessons, I talk with whoever the professor is, and we kind of work out a deal. Usually they're really great about just keeping my rate that the kids are used to paying, and then the kids can decide how long of a lesson, if they want 30, 45, or an hour, and then pay that amount. I try to make as many lessons possible to cover any expenses that the teacher incurs on their trip, because some of them get funding from their school, but a lot of them don't. But I do whatever I can to make that not be an issue for them, so that we'll, cover their plane cost or rental car. And if I have to put some extra of my own cash in it, it's totally worth any of that, because it pays off so much for the kids in the long run. I've had almost all of my students where they choose to audition are because of these master classes, because they're getting experience with these teachers, which is great, and I love it. And the other cool thing is that none of these teachers that you bring in are going to steal your kids. They're not like that. They're just there to help. And it might just be a little thing, like they say something to a kid and you're like staring at the child and going, I have been telling you to do this for 6 months. But because someone else told them, suddenly the kid will do it. And it's beneficial to you as a teacher too, because then you can be like, hey, you remember that thing I told you? Yeah, I like doing that. It gives the kids all the introduction and all the getting to meet a lot of people, and it gives me time to also meet people, because there have been a lot of people who come up to me at TMEA and IDRS who are like, hey, can we come work with your kids this year? Or I'll meet somebody like just on a whim. I'll hear someone play and invite them to come because I was impressed with their playing, and I have heard through the grapevine through the years that they're great teachers. And so I want my kids to have that exposure. The other thing that I feel like makes me special as a teacher, which I know a lot of teachers do this, but as much as I possibly can, I get to every solo performance. And if I can't make it to the performance, I try to get to the piano rehearsal. Even if it means like getting done teaching at a school and packing up and running to the next school, or running to the piano player's house or whatever. I will do every effort, and I've even FaceTimed in to some of their piano rehearsals because I just couldn't make it in person. Or even same thing with the solo recitals. I try to go to all of the beginner band concerts that I can. Or again, have the parents FaceTime me in so I can hear. Because the kids knowing that you care enough to want a recording or want to FaceTime in if you can't make it means the world to them. Showing up to their solo performance means the world to them. Just think about when you played a recital and somebody from your past that you would never expect in a million years showed up, or even someone from your present that you thought wasn't going to be able to drive in or fly into your recital shows up. Like, think how excited and happy that makes you feel, and it means like 1,000 times more to a 12-year-old. And so I do literally everything I can to hear them play. Another really important thing about being a teacher that you need to kind of know going into it is that it also means being a counselor. And that's the hardest part of it. Because you have to be able to come to terms with a lesson not including any playing if the kid is spilling their heart to you. Because if it gets to that, you're doing a really good job. Hardest part of the whole talk right here. If you can take a psychology class, if you're not done with school and you can take an extra elective, do it. I hated my psychology class in college, but getting to this point and being able to have that knowledge tucked away in the back of my brain to be able to talk these kids through some hard stuff has been really, really important. I've had kids come in and tell me that they wanted to kill themselves, which is not easy. But if you know how to make them feel like they matter, not only to you, but to everyone around them, and that what they're going through and what they're thinking is really normal, because it unfortunately is, that they're not a bad person for having those thoughts as long as they don't act on it. And then, of course, going to the counselor at school so that they can get the proper help. But knowing, for them to know that you are a safe place to get to that point in your relationship is very, very important. So just know that you need to treat them with respect no matter how old they are, because if you don't give them the respect, they're not gonna like trust you in return. Also, talking them through nerves. I am not one of the kinds of people that has nerves of steel. I have, like many, taken way more bad auditions than I have good auditions. And when they're in high school, in a lot of places, the all-state process, whatever it may be, means everything to these kids. No matter how many times you tell them that once you step foot off of that graduation podium, nothing means anything about it. Like, no one in college cares if you made all-state 4 years. Cool. Shut up about it, But right now it means everything. And so for you to be able to talk them through the psychology of auditions is really important. And if you can relate your own experiences to them, even if you embellish, it's okay to embellish, they'll never know. But anything you can do to like help them understand their own psyche, how to walk through all of those emotions and those thoughts with them is really important. For me, I only made all-state because my band director and my private lesson teacher forced me to make a contrabassoon tape. In Texas, there's region, area, and then state. There's all these different steps, and I never made it past the region level, so I never got to even attempt to make it to state on bassoon. But I made a contrabassoon tape my senior year, and I literally got forced into making it. I didn't want to. But after making it, I was really happy with being able to go to All-State, and I had a great time. But I know that it doesn't mean anything. No one in college, I think I got a Texas All-Stater, because I went to out-of-state school. And then it was over. No one cared. And so for them, like I've had 2 kids in the past 2 years, make All-State their junior year and then not make it their senior year. And for a small amount of time, their world was shattered. But to be able to talk them through and make them realize that it doesn't play any part in their future, was the most important thing to be able to talk them through and make them understand. So yeah. All those are important. With I allow the parents and the kids to text me pretty much at any time of day. I turn my phone on mute when I go to sleep. But I let them text me questions about their etudes, text me recordings. Sometimes I'll tell them, you've sent way too many recordings, I'm not listening to them all. Because they need to know that there's limits somewhere, but I also know that a lot of them, they kind of need some extra guidance, and I'm allowing that. Maybe I'm a pushover, but I think it helps. I've also had a bunch of them text me because they're just freaking out about school. And again, safe place. I can tell them it's okay. I can tell them that 2 + 2 = 5, and they'll know not to listen to me. So yeah, I've woken up to a couple texts going, I'm sorry it's so early, I hope I don't wake you up, but blah, blah, blah. And it's because they'll forget what they wanted to ask me if they wait. And that's fine, and I'm cool with that. And the parents know that the kids can text me. I have permission. We've had a couple of situations in my district where there's been some stepping over bounds So we have to have permission in writing from the parents to text the kids, but I did that, and so it's fine. I have my high schoolers in a group me. So if I have something real pressing that only needs to be said to the high schoolers, I'll just pop a message in there. I have all of their masterclass schedule in there so they can keep track of it, and they get little reminders of when there's an extra masterclass coming up. And it's really cool because I really want my studio to be a family. I've seen studios, whether, you know, a high school level or college level, just be at each other's throats. I've been in a studio where everyone's just at each other's throats, and it's not fun for anybody. So I really make a really big effort to make my kids know each other, because they all go to different schools, and get along with each other and like each other. So that when someone has an audition, you know, for youth orchestra, if they make it, I'll send a text and be like, hey, Johnny just made the top group, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. If they do well at region, like they know each other at region, because we do little mock regions throughout this semester. I had two little 8th graders last year who at the mock regions kept switching. They kept, you know, the other one, they would beat each other every week. And it got down to the 2 of them for the top 2. And they went to different schools, and usually at the junior high, they're separated by schools, and they were yelling, you know, announcing the names, and they ran over to each other from their separate school benches and hugged each other. And they were like, oh my gosh, it's like if you look at a basketball team at the end of a big game and they're like arms linked, they were like that with each other. And when they announced the final order, they hugged, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you. And even when the kids left the room, I had this amazing group of 8th graders that were all just good friends and buddies with each other. And they were like congratulating each other. You could hear, I was a judge that year, and you could hear them telling everybody, you sounded so good, as they walked out of the region room. And I was like, that's what I want. That's what every single year, that's what I want my kids to do. Because when they get to high school, they're going to be exposed to some kids who have really nasty attitudes. And I just want them to like huddle around each other and just like be a good team and be happy for each other, no matter who beats whom or whatever. So when they do that, it's really heartwarming. I also try to get little groups together to play at my church. I haven't done it in a while, and of course I can't do it for a long time now. But that way they get it gives them a little bit of fun time, because we congregate at my house at like 6:30 in the morning to be able to get there in time. And in between services, I take them out to Starbucks and get them all caffeine happy, which is wonderful fun for the parents. Then they go and play. And so then all of these like church members are coming up to them and going, oh my gosh, that was so wonderful, even if it like absolutely was terrible. So it really gives them a confidence boost as well, which is great. And a couple years ago, I put a group of 16 of them together, and we applied to play at a showcase at the Music Educators Conference. And I corralled 16 high schoolers on a Friday, and we played, and it was great. And then they got to enjoy the conference as well, like all the exhibits and baby bassoons. And the parents got to come and see their hard work pay off. I think for the parents, that also helped them realize like what they're really gaining from these private lessons. Because it's not just let's play the bassoon. It's let's be a team player. Let's be a strong supporter, and let's be able to make music with others, and obviously with themselves, with each other. So yeah. Almost done. Sorry. I am a big, I really strongly believe in pushing kids with their solo choices. Most of my schools don't participate in the like UIL solo contest, which has a set list, so we can kind of just pick for anything. So I will push a kid as far and hard as they are willing to be pushed. This year I had an 8th grader play the fourth movement of the Hurlstone Sonata. And she also played a different concerto for a concerto competition. So she learned 2 solos because she wanted to. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you no. I play a couple of solos for them to let them choose. And because I know from personal experience, it does not do me any good to play a solo that I don't like the sound of. And so kids are the exact same way. If they don't like how it sounds, they're not going to be excited to practice it. A few years ago, I had an 8th grader. She's going to be a senior next year. She was trying to pick her solo. Her school did a solo recital instead of a contest. So they were playing whatever solo they picked in front of their peers and the parents. And she is a really picky kid. Like, it takes forever for her to choose a solo. But I was, you have to be patient. You have to know the kids. So I'm going through and I start playing a Vivaldi sonata. And I was playing through it and I looked over and she had tears rolling down her face. And she looked at me and she's like, that is the prettiest piece of music I've ever heard. And she put her heart into learning that. And she gave herself ownership of that, which is really, really important. So, that's really, really important for them to have a connection to the piece that they play. And to encourage them to do solo competitions or concerto competitions. The community orchestra I used to play with has a concerto competition every year, and they divide it up from 6th through 8th graders and 6th through 9th graders and 10th through 12th graders. And so I have a lot of kids do the junior competition because it lets my really good 8th and 9th graders shine, especially when they're competing against flutes and trumpets and clarinets. Because they're good enough by that point that they can really play something that helps them to stand out. I also like to get them involved in summer camps as early as possible. We have one that is run through our district called Stars and Stripes Band Camp. And it's basically, it's a week, it's 4 hours a day, and they have a full band, woodwind sectional, and bassoon time. And so that gets them able to meet kids not only from from the same district that I teach in, so the kids they'll be singing region, but also kids from the surrounding area. So they get to meet a lot of fun kids and have a lot of fun. Then I try to get them to do vocal majority. If you have kids who can do that, who you want them to go, all you have to do is say, you get to play with knives. And they're like, Mom, sign me up. Because it's cool to play with knives. Yeah, so, and I also like to get as many of them into the university level band and orchestra camps as possible. Those are a little more expensive because there's housing involved. But every single one of the kids that I've had go to one of them they've loved it. So if they don't want to do vocal majority, then I'll try to get them into a university one. I also like to push them to do the youth orchestras as much as possible. Excuse me. This year I have kids in all 3 of the Houston area orchestras. So there's spaces for every level. I have an 8th grader who is in kind of the beginner-ish level, and I have a senior who's in a top level, and a senior and a junior who are in the youth chamber orchestra. So it's cool, and I like that they like to do that because it gives them a different way of playing rather than just band playing, because a lot of them don't do full orchestra. I think only 2 of my schools do full orchestra. So it gives them another opportunity to play. And if you're going to do private lessons, for me, the easiest thing to do is to make your own reeds. Did I skip a page? No, I did not. Okay. If you find a good mass-produced reed, great. Then don't stress over it. I make reeds. I don't know what I'm doing. But I make reeds for 12-year-olds is my philosophy, and that is going to change soon, but whatever. What I do with my reeds, and that'll probably change after all of this is over, I make a stock reed with a tip profile, and then I adjust it to the kids' needs. So if they're sitting there playing and they can't get any of their low notes out, I'll take the collar and I'll make a more defined collar. If the sound is really bright, then I'll, accentuate the thumbnail, and I'll do whatever I think I need to do to make it work as best as I can. And just try to get it as in tune as possible so they don't have to, and as little work as possible, because you don't want a kid to have to bite and work hard on a reed. You want them to just be able to blow and for the reed to do its thing. So yeah, I'm not the person to ask about reeds. But I make reeds for 12-year-olds, so it doesn't matter that much. So in conclusion, if you couldn't tell, I haven't taken a public speaking class, but you want to remember that you are doing this for the kids. Like I said in the beginning, you are helping to make them not only good musicians, but good people. If you treat them right in lessons and are patient with them and encouraging to them, they are going to remember you. I was supposed to go to Canada next week to see my very first teacher. I haven't seen her since 2009. But she hasn't taught me since 1999. And because she made such a big impression on me, I don't want to lose the contact with her. I have former students who are in college right now who text me and say, I'm having trouble with this. I need to do this and I don't know what to do. And even though they do have, all of them are in really, really good hands with their college professors, they still trust me to help them answer the question, even if my answer is, go talk to your teacher. But you want to just remember at the end of the day, you're making an impression that will last them a lifetime. So you want to make sure it's a good impression. One of the biggest examples I can give you of that, not from me wanting, to spend time with my first teacher as much as I can, which is not that often because she lives in Canada. I went to a birthday party of one of my friends from junior high, her 25th birthday party. And it was at a Mexican restaurant, and I got there and I sat down, and the girl across the table goes, "You taught me bassoon lessons in junior high." And it was one of those kids, it wasn't the kid that caused me to have headaches, but it's one of those kids that I taught when I was in high school, who, for all intents and purposes, I was not that good of a teacher. But because I did something well, she remembered me, even enough to recognize me 13, 14 years later, which is crazy. So no, it wasn't that long ago. I don't remember. 12. We're going to go with 12. So they can see you. They will see you later in life, whether you're thinking that they're going to see you or not. It will happen. And if you have done your job to make band and bassoon a positive environment, a safe environment, they're going to remember your face, no matter how much time might change it. Which I think is, when she piped up, I was like, holy cow. Because that's honestly the biggest compliment that I can get, is when I see a kid in the wild after I've stopped teaching them for whatever reason, and they come up and they make a point to say something to me. I saw one of my kids at Mr. Gaddy's pizza place, and she was working at the the ticket counter, and she had not been in lessons since 8th grade, and she was a senior, and she came up to me in the middle of the game room and was like, Robin, oh my gosh. And it turns out then later I started teaching her younger sister without knowing it. But that's fun. And so just always think, whenever you're working with a kid, whenever you're talking to a band director, all of these things are going to lead to a point where later on in life, someone will come up to you and say, hey, you made a difference way back when. I didn't continue playing, but I learned a lot from you, and thank you. And that's the biggest compliment you can get. I think that's pretty much all I have about being a private lesson teacher. I do have a large enough studio between lessons and reads to literally make a living and pay my mortgage. And I don't live extravagantly, but I live comfortably. And I enjoy what I do. And there's changes coming, but they're good changes, and they're for me. But I would not change the past 10 years and what I've done and chosen to do with my life for anything. It's meant way too much to me. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you get something out of it, even if you say, I don't ever want to do that. Feel free to get in contact with me. Hopefully there will be some contact information somewhere, Facebook message, whatever. And if you want to try out my music stuff, I can give you a free month to try that out. If you just want to ask questions, I'm here. Kind of like how I am for my students. I'm here. So ask away. And yeah, have a good time in quarantine. And I hope that you learn something and take it to heart, because it's very rewarding doing this for a lot of reasons. But yeah, cool. Bye.